I always ran into her at the laundromat on Wednesday nights. Not because I planned it. Just because my schedule lined up that way: late class, empty fridge, a couple hours before sleep. That's when she'd appear, basket balanced on her hip, hair tied back like she didn't want to be noticed. The place was nothing special: humming dryers, detergent smell sharp in the air, a lone clock ticking too loudly. But she made the room shift. Even the flickering light over the folding table seemed softer when she was around. I first noticed her hands before I noticed her face. The way she folded towels, slow, precise, corners meeting as if the fabric deserved respect. I'd catch myself glancing, then pretend I was watching the dryer spin. She must have noticed me, too, because one night she nodded toward my half-wrinkled pile. "You fold like someone's in a hurry." Her voice was dry, almost teasing. I fumbled, smoothing the edge of a t-shirt. "Guess I never learned the proper way." She smirked. "Proper's overrated." Then she went back to her towels. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Little by little, we kept speaking. Not full conversations, just stray comments. She remembered I always picked the corner dryer, the one that rattled. I remembered she used lavender detergent. One evening, when the laundromat was empty except for us, she looked at my crumpled pile and slid one of my shirts onto her side of the table. "Here. Watch." Her fingers moved quick, practiced. Fold, smooth, stack. I stood there holding another shirt, like an idiot. "Better?" she asked. "Cleaner lines," I said, though my voice caught halfway. She laughed, quiet, but real. Then handed the shirt back. I didn't tell her that was the first laugh I'd heard all week. It was strange how fast she began to fit into my thoughts. I'd catch myself wondering if she'd show up, if her basket would be full or just half, if she'd wear her hair down instead of tied. On nights she wasn't there, the room felt heavier, like the buzzing lights wanted to remind me I was waiting for someone who hadn't promised anything. I never asked her age. Didn't need to. The tiny lines at the corner of her eyes, the steady way she moved, she wasn't like the people my age who spoke in plans and half-jokes. She seemed finished with that phase. And still, I found myself drawn in. One night, after I packed my laundry into a bag, I sat in the parking lot with my phone in my hand. I typed out a message I'd never send: "Good to see you again." Then I deleted it. The glass door swung open behind me, and there she was, adjusting her coat, carrying her basket one-handed. She noticed me, paused, and leaned against the doorway. "You're always here late." "Habit," I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was considering something. Then she pushed away from the frame, walked past my car, and stopped. The night was cold, our breath visible. She set her basket down and turned back, closer than usual. Her voice dropped so low I almost thought I imagined it. "One night won't hurt," she whispered. Before I could answer, she picked up her basket again and walked toward the building across the street. A door clicked shut behind her. I sat there, hand still on my phone, the unsent message glowing faintly on the screen. The next time I saw her, she didn't mention what she'd whispered outside the laundromat. Neither did I. Instead, she was crouched by the vending machine, smacking the side because her packet of crackers got stuck halfway down. I stood there longer than I should have, watching her shake it like she had something personal against it. "You gonna help or just stare?" she asked without looking up. I bent down, gave the machine one solid shove, and the crackers dropped. She picked them up, tore the wrapper open, and held it out to me. "Split, since you're the muscle." We sat on the folding table, sharing dry crackers like it was dinner. The silence stretched, not awkward exactly, just waited. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yeah." "You?" She nodded. Then, after a pause, "Divorced. 5 years." She said it flat like weather. No details, no story. I almost asked more but stopped. Some words felt like trespassing. Instead, I admitted something smaller. "I don't usually talk much here. Just watch the dryer spin." She gave me a sideways look. "Exciting life." Guess so. But her smile softened the edge. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying the way she'd lean back on the table, her hair falling loose, the line of her wrist against the packet of crackers. I wondered what her place looked like. If she had pictures on the walls, or if the rooms were as plain as mine. The thought felt dangerous, like I was standing on the edge of something I shouldn't lean over. She was older. She'd lived things I hadn't even started. And still, I found myself waiting for Wednesday. The following week, the laundromat was empty again, just the hum of the dryers and the faint buzz of the fluorescent light. She set her basket down beside mine. "Got tea at home if you're not in a rush," she said casually, like she was offering an umbrella in the rain. I hesitated. "Sure." Her apartment was across the street, second floor, warm light spilling through thin curtains. Inside, everything was neat but lived in. A plant by the window, a blanket folded on the couch. A stack of books half-read. She boiled water while I stood there, not knowing where to put my hands. Finally I sat on the edge of the couch. She handed me a mug. Chamomile. Too hot to sip right away. We talked in fragments. She mentioned her son, grown now, studying abroad. I told her about my part-time job, how it barely covered rent. She didn't laugh at that. Just nodded, as if she understood. At some point the conversation ran out, but neither of us moved. The ticking clock filled the room. She leaned back, eyes half closed, fingers curled loosely around her mug. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I did was shift, setting my cup down beside hers on the table. The mugs touched lightly, ceramic against ceramic, and the sound felt louder than it should have. Her eyes flicked to mine, lingering a fraction too long. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. We didn't talk about the mugs touching. Or the way her gaze lingered. It was just another Wednesday again, folding shirts, the hum of dryers, the faint smell of lavender that always clung to her clothes. But the air had changed. When I reached for the same sheet she did, my hand brushed against hers. She didn't move right away. Then she pulled back, folding quickly, like she was trying to smooth something more than fabric. "You ever regret things?" she asked suddenly, eyes on the sheet. "Sometimes," I said. My throat was dry. "Me too." She didn't explain. I didn't ask. The week after, she wasn't there. No basket. No lavender. I sat in the laundromat longer than I needed to, watching my clothes tumble until the dryers clicked off. My phone stayed in my hand the whole time, but I didn't text. Didn't even have her number. The absence felt sharper than I expected. When I finally stepped outside, she was across the street. Grocery bag in her arms, hair loose for once. She stopped when she saw me, shifted the bag higher on her hip. "Late night?" she asked. "Yeah. Thought you weren't coming." She looked at me a moment too long. Then she said softly, "Schedules change." A few nights later, I was carrying my laundry upstairs when I noticed her door cracked open. She was inside, standing on a chair, struggling with the curtain rod. "You'll fall," I said before I thought about it. She startled, then sighed. "It's fine. Chair's steady enough." I set my bag down, crossed the hall, and held the rod in place while she tightened the screws. Close enough that I could see the faint line of freckles across her collarbone. "Thanks," she murmured. "Sure." When it was done, she stepped back, brushing dust from her hands. For a moment, we just stood there in the narrow space between her chair and the window. The quiet pressed in, faint hum of the fridge, a car passing outside. I wanted to say something, anything. Ask if she ever thought about me the way I thought about her. Ask if that whisper outside the laundromat meant what I hoped it did. Instead, I just shifted, and she did too, and suddenly we were closer. Her hand brushed my arm as she reached for the curtain. Not accidental. Not entirely deliberate either. Her breath caught, barely audible. My chest tightened. Then footsteps sounded in the hall. A door slammed somewhere below. She stepped back quickly, pulling the curtain across the window. Thanks for the help, she said, voice steady but distant now. I nodded, picking up my bag. My hand tightened around the strap, like it could keep me from saying what I wanted to. At the door, I glanced back. She was standing still, curtain drawn, her profile lit faintly by the street lamp outside. For a second, she turned, and our eyes met. Not long enough to be anything, but long enough to almost be. It was late again. Not laundromat late, later. Past midnight. I'd gone for a walk, headphones in, hands shoved in my jacket pockets. The streets were empty, quiet except for the buzz of a single street lamp. And then I saw her. Sitting on the bench across from the corner store, grocery bag at her feet. She wasn't doing anything. Just staring at the pavement like she was waiting for something that never came. I hesitated, then crossed over. You okay? She looked up, startled, then exhaled. Couldn't sleep. I sat down beside her. Not too close. The space between us felt deliberate. For a while we just listened to the hum of the streetlight. My knee bounced once, then stopped when I noticed hers was still. Sometimes it feels strange, she said suddenly. How quiet it gets. After everyone's gone. I nodded. Yeah. Feels heavier somehow. She tilted her head toward me, just slightly. You don't get that yet. You've still got everything in front of you. Her words landed heavier than she meant. I almost said she was wrong, that I already felt the same kind of quiet. Instead, I picked at the seam of my sleeve. Do you regret it? I asked finally. The leaving. I stopped. The marriage? She was silent for a long time. Then, sometimes. But not the way you think. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She shifted on the bench, turning just enough that I caught the faint reflection of her eyes in the streetlight. And this? She gestured vaguely between us. This can't mean anything. You know that, right? My chest tightened. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I don't know what it means, I said finally. But it feels like. I broke off, shaking my head. Forget it. Her hand tightened briefly on the bench, knuckles pale in the dim light. I can't let myself want this, she whispered, almost too low to hear. We sat in silence. The kind of silence that fills every corner, louder than words. I thought about reaching out. Just placing my hand over hers, nothing more. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, Then why am I here? The question hung between us, raw and bare, and neither of us moved to answer. She blinked, slow, like she was holding something back. Then she looked away, down the street, as if waiting for an answer that wasn't coming. She didn't come to the laundromat the next week. Or the one after. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Schedules change, people get busy. But the longer the machine spun without her, the stranger it felt. The lavender scent was gone. The quiet remarks. Even the way she folded towels, I missed that. I stopped lingering. Loaded, washed, left. Quicker than usual, like speeding through a song I used to play on repeat. The third week, I saw her across the street. She was walking with someone, a man, maybe late 40s, carrying a box like he just helped her move something heavy. She laughed at something he said. A light laugh, easy, not the careful kind she gave me. I froze in the doorway, heat rushing to my face. She didn't notice me. Or maybe she did and just didn't show it. I went home and dumped my laundry on the floor. Sat there staring at the pile like it had answers. 2 nights later, her door was open. I could hear faint music, the kind that belonged to another time, some old jazz standard. I stood outside, bag slung over my shoulder, ready to knock. But I didn't. Instead, I heard a voice inside. Male. Not the same man, maybe. Couldn't tell. I stepped back, heart hammering. When the door shut a few minutes later, the hallway went quiet again. Too quiet. The next Wednesday, she came. Basket in hand, hair tied back, as if nothing had shifted. But when she saw me, her smile faltered. Small. Careful. You've been scarce, she said. Yeah. Been busy. The silence between us was sharper now. She folded quickly, no small jokes, no easy rhythm. My hands fumbled, shirts wrinkled, but she didn't correct me this time. Finally, she said, My son's back in town. Just for a while. I blinked. Oh. She glanced up. Her eyes softened, almost apologetic. He doesn't know I talk to you. Talk to you? Not see you. Not wait for you. Just talk. I nodded, stuffing clothes into the bag. Makes sense. Either of us spoke again. At home, I typed a message into my phone. Do you want me to stop coming on Wednesdays? I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over send. But I didn't press it. I deleted the words one by one until the screen was blank. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It happened on a Sunday, not a Wednesday. I'd just come back from the store, arms heavy with bags, when I saw her sitting on the steps outside our building. No basket, no coat, just her, staring at the cracks in the concrete. I slowed. She looked up, eyes tired but steady. Hi, she said like it was a word she hadn't used in days. I set my bags down, not trusting myself to speak. She patted the step beside her. Sit. I did. The air was cool, faint smell of rain still lingering from earlier. For a while, we just watched the street. A couple of kids biked past. Somewhere, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds made sharper by how quiet we were. Finally, she said, He went back. My son. I nodded. She kept her gaze on the pavement. I don't know why I pulled away. Maybe because it felt dangerous. Like if I leaned in too far, I wouldn't stop. My throat tightened. You don't have to explain. But I do. Her voice cracked slightly, then steadied. I don't want to hurt you. And I don't want you to think this. She gestured between us, small and helpless. Is just nothing. Because it isn't. At least, not to me. I let the words settle. Then, quietly, it isn't nothing to me either. She finally turned, met my eyes. The look held everything we hadn't said, the late nights, the pauses, the unsent messages. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. The silence after was heavy, but not empty. More like a balance, waiting to tip. Her hand shifted against the step, just close enough that my fingers could brush hers if I wanted. For a second, I imagined pulling away. Pretending I didn't notice. Keeping things safe. Instead, I let my hand stay there. Not grabbing, not holding. Just close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. She didn't move. I thought of every question I wanted to ask. What happens now? What do you want? What am I to you? But none of them felt right. So I just said, Okay. Her lips parted, then curved into the smallest smile. A real one. Tired, a little sad, but real. She let her fingers slide barely, until they rested against mine. Not a kiss. Not a promise. Just a touch, quiet and human. We sat like that until the street went dark and the air turned colder. Time didn't change all at once. It never does. We kept seeing each other, but not in some dramatic way. It wasn't every night, or every Wednesday. Sometimes it was just a shared cup of tea at her place after I carried her groceries up the stairs. Sometimes it was silence on the bench outside the corner store, watching the streetlights flicker on at 8:47 p.m. No declarations. No promises. Just presence. I stopped waiting for her at the laundromat. Not because I didn't want to, but because the waiting wasn't the point anymore. She still came, sometimes, and when she did, we folded side by side. My shirt stayed wrinkled, her towels stayed perfect. She teased me less about it, though. Or maybe I just learned to enjoy being corrected. The edge of guilt, the hesitation, it never fully vanished. But it softened. Turned into something quieter. Like the hum of a fridge in the background. Always there, but not worth flinching at. One Sunday morning, I knocked on her door with a thermos of black coffee in hand. She opened it wearing her robe, hair undone, blinking at me like I'd woken her too early. "Tea, girl?" I said, holding up the thermos. She raised an eyebrow. And you can try mine for once." She smirked, then stepped aside. "Fine. But if it's awful, I get to say I told you so." We sat at her kitchen table, her with chamomile in her cup, me with black coffee, the thermos between us like a joke either of us had to finish. The window let in weak sunlight, dust specks floating through. Nothing remarkable. And still, I wanted to remember it. It's strange how life doesn't need a climax to feel full. The big moments we almost had, the near kiss, the whisper on the street, the pauses that nearly broke us, they faded into something else. Not less. Just different. Now, when I think about her, it isn't with that sharp ache I used to carry. It's steadier. Like walking home and knowing the light will still be on in the window across the street. Last night, we sat on the same bench where she once told me she couldn't let herself want this. She leaned against me, quiet, both of us watching the cracked pavement below our feet. At one point, she reached over and tapped my wrist, small and absent-minded. "Still bouncing," she said softly. I looked down. My knee was moving, jittery as always. And I laughed. Because only she would notice. Only she would remember. Sometimes love doesn't arrive like a storm. Sometimes it just sits beside you, week after week, until you realize you've built a life around it. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?